The room was silent. In the cold expanse of the Galactic Council's chamber, the weight of what had just been said hung in the air. Earth. Banned. No longer a member of the prestigious council that governed the galaxy. The words echoed in the minds of those who heard them, the sheer magnitude of the decision paralyzing the room. A galactic empire as old as time itself had made an irreversible decision. Earth was no longer welcome among them. Humanity had always been seen as wild. Untamed. A species that, for all its brilliance, lacked the discipline and wisdom that the ancient races of the galaxy had come to value. But no one had expected this. The Council's decision was final, and Earth's fate was sealed. Council members, vast and ancient, regarded each other in the dimly lit room. The holograms above their heads flickered, showing countless stars and planets. Their faces were unreadable, their eyes ancient, as if they had seen this coming for centuries. Earth had been a problem for too long. The humans had not just pushed their boundaries, they had shattered them. The tension was palpable. A soft hum vibrated through the chamber, the quiet buzzing of alien technology at work, but none of the members spoke. All had their reasons for this decision, and all knew that it would spark consequences. Earth, once a proud member of the Galactic Council, now stood alone. Among the humans present was Captain Alex Monroe, commander of the United Earth Defense Fleet. His eyes narrowed as the Council's verdict washed over him. He was no stranger to the political games of the galaxy. He had seen betrayal, dishonesty, and manipulation, but he never thought the Council would act so decisively. This was a game-changing moment for humanity. He shifted in his seat, his mind racing. What did this mean? The Council had banned Earth, but why? The answer, he knew, was hidden in the depths of the Council's twisted history. No one spoke openly about the real reasons behind Earth's exclusion. Whispers had always circulated, but now it was time to find the truth. Monroe wasn't the only one with questions. He glanced at his fellow humans, who sat tense in their seats, their faces a mixture of confusion and fear. Their planet had just been thrown into the unknown, and no one knew what would come next. Suddenly, a deep voice broke the silence. "We will not stand idly by while the galaxy falls into chaos," said Nyrith, a massive alien of ancient stature. His 4 arms folded across his chest, his eyes burning with an intensity that seemed to pierce the air. "The Council has acted to protect the galaxy from the dangers Earth poses. You humans have shown time and again that your thirst for power exceeds your wisdom. Now you must face the consequences." Monroe clenched his fists. His teeth ground together, but he did not speak. Nyrith was right. In many ways, Earth's expansion had been reckless. Human explorers had ventured too far. Disturbed ancient civilizations, and left behind enemies that now threatened the fragile peace of the galaxy. But was that enough to warrant a banishment? Was the punishment too severe? Monroe's instincts told him there was something deeper going on, something they weren't being told. Earth had always been an outsider in the eyes of the Council. Its raw potential, its sheer willpower, had always made the galactic leaders nervous. But now, there was no going back. "Captain Monroe," another voice spoke, softer but no less chilling. It was Ilaria, a diplomat from the Vathri Empire, her race known for their wisdom and their harsh judgments. "The decision is final. There is no place for your kind in the Council. We have done what was necessary for the safety of the galaxy." Monroe's heart raced. The words didn't sink in. How could this happen? How could the Council, with all its supposed wisdom, make such a drastic move? The humans had contributed far more than just warships and technology. They had offered ideas, new ways of thinking, and had shared their knowledge with the galaxy. But now that was all forgotten. "Do you believe this is the right course of action?" Monroe asked, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. He stood up, his voice carrying a defiance that echoed in the chamber. The council members exchanged glances, some of them clearly unsettled by Monroe's question. The silence was broken by the deep rumble of the chamber, the air filled with a tense energy. Finally, it was Nyrith who spoke again. "You may think that your people have contributed something valuable," he said slowly, "but there are secrets about Earth that even you do not know. Secrets that the Council can no longer ignore." That sentence hung in the air. Monroe's mind raced. What was he implying? What did the Council know about Earth that he didn't? His thoughts were interrupted as Ilaria stood. "You are dismissed," she said coldly. "Return to your planet, and rebuild. The galaxy no longer needs your interference." Monroe stood frozen for a moment, unable to comprehend the gravity of the situation. He wanted to shout, to demand answers, but he knew there was no point. The decision was made. As he and the other human delegates left the chamber, he couldn't shake the feeling that they had been part of something far greater than they understood. Earth was banned, yes. But the reasons? They were still hidden. Hours later. The news was already spreading like wildfire across the galaxy. Earth had been banned from the Galactic Council. The media channels exploded with debates, discussions, and theories. But Monroe wasn't watching the broadcasts. He was staring at a holographic map of the galaxy, his fingers tapping the console in frustration. He knew something wasn't right. The Council had always been careful with their decisions, and such a bold move could only mean one thing. Earth had crossed a line that even the Council could no longer overlook. Yet, the more he thought about it, the more he realized that the Council had been hiding something. Something that went beyond Earth's expansion and their reckless behavior. The banishment was just the surface. There was a far deeper mystery, one that Monroe needed to uncover. "Captain," a voice broke his thoughts. Lieutenant Rhea Sharma, his trusted second-in-command, stepped forward. She was holding a data pad, her brow furrowed in concern. "You need to see this." She handed him the data pad, and Monroe's eyes narrowed as he read the message displayed before him. It was a cryptic transmission, encrypted heavily. The message, however, was clear. The artifact on Earth's moon is not just an artifact. It is a key. A key to something the Council has feared for centuries. The room seemed to spin. The artifact. Monroe had heard rumors about it. An ancient relic, found on the surface of the moon. Some said it was a weapon, others claimed it was a piece of technology far beyond human understanding. But no one, not even the Council, had ever explained its true purpose. Monroe's heart skipped a beat. Could this be the reason for Earth's banishment? The artifact? Why had the Council never mentioned it? "Get me everything we know about that artifact," Monroe ordered, his voice tense. "We need to find out what the Council is hiding. And we need to find out, fast." As Monroe turned to leave, a loud alarm blared through the ship. His body tensed as the ship's lights flickered and went out. The emergency systems kicked in, casting the corridors in a red glow. On the bridge, Rhea's voice broke through the chaos. "Captain, we've detected an unknown vessel approaching. It's huge, and it's heading straight for Earth." The hairs on the back of Monroe's neck stood on end. Was this the beginning of something much worse? Or was it already too late? Monroe stood on the command deck, staring out into the dark abyss of space. The hum of the ship's engines was the only sound in the room. The lights flickered sporadically, casting long shadows across the walls. Outside, Earth's blue and green silhouette drifted slowly, like a distant memory. Banned. His mind kept returning to that word. But it wasn't just about the banishment. It was the message they had received about the artifact. The key. A key to something the Galactic Council had feared for centuries. And now, with a massive alien vessel heading toward Earth, Monroe knew that whatever lay ahead would change humanity's fate forever. "Captain," Lieutenant Rhea Sharma's voice snapped him from his thoughts. She stepped up beside him, holding a datapad in her hands. The ship approaching Earth is unlike anything we've seen before. It's not on any of the Council's records. We don't even know what race it belongs to. Monroe's eyes narrowed as he turned to her. Any idea what they want? Sharma's lips pressed into a thin line. We don't know, but there's something about this ship that feels wrong. Its energy signature is unstable. Like it's not meant to be out here. And it's coming in fast. The thought of an unknown alien force, heading straight for Earth, sent a chill down Monroe's spine. The Council's banishment had only been the beginning. Something larger was at play. He didn't believe in coincidences, especially not in matters as serious as this. The artifact had to be the key, the connection between everything that had happened so far. We need to contact Earth, Monroe said, his voice firm. And tell them to prepare. We don't know what we're dealing with here. Rhea nodded, quickly tapping on her console to send a message back to Earth's leadership. Monroe turned back to the viewport, his thoughts racing. The Council had never been fully transparent, but what if there was more to the artifact than even they realized? Why had it been hidden on the moon for so long? Why did it have such a powerful connection to Earth's past? And why had it triggered this chain of events? Hours later. The situation had only grown worse. Monroe stood in front of the holographic map of the galaxy, his mind whirling with possibilities. The alien vessel was drawing closer, but there was still no sign of its intentions. Every communication attempt had been met with silence. And then there was the cryptic message about the artifact. He couldn't ignore it. The artifact. A key. His thoughts were interrupted by the sudden arrival of Captain Elena Voss, commander of the Earth Defense Fleet's flagship. She was a seasoned officer, strong and calculating, and had been a trusted ally of Monroe's for years. She stepped onto the bridge with a sense of urgency that was palpable. Captain Monroe, she said without preamble. I just received an encrypted transmission from Earth's highest council. They've found something. Something related to the artifact. Monroe's heart skipped a beat. What did they find? Voss handed him a datapad, and he quickly scanned its contents. The words seemed almost impossible to believe, but he knew they were true. The artifact was more than just a key, it was an ancient device capable of unlocking an unimaginable power. A power that could reshape the very fabric of the galaxy. Monroe looked up, his brow furrowed. So, this is why the Council banned us. They knew the artifact had the potential to change everything. And now, someone else knows about it. We're not the only ones who are interested, Voss replied grimly. I've spoken with Earth's top scientists. They believe this artifact is part of an ancient alien civilization, one that existed long before any known race in the galaxy. It's technology that should have been lost to time. But somehow, it's here. On our moon. How did it end up there? Monroe asked. We don't know, Voss answered. But it's clear now that whatever is coming for us isn't just a random attack. Whoever controls the artifact controls more than just Earth, they control the galaxy. Monroe felt a knot form in his stomach. Then we need to find it first. And we need to make sure no one else gets their hands on it. The unknown enemy. The hours ticked by, and the unknown vessel continued its steady approach toward Earth. Tensions were running high. On the surface, humanity was in chaos. The news of Earth's banishment had spread throughout the planet, and people were left wondering what the future held. But in the depths of space, far from prying eyes, a new war was brewing. As the alien vessel neared Earth's orbit, it suddenly stopped, its massive form looming ominously above the planet. It was an odd, angular design, nothing like the sleek ships of the Galactic Council or the familiar, human-made vessels. Its surface shimmered with a strange, metallic sheen, and it emitted a low, vibrating hum that sent a chill through the air. But it was its energy signature that caused Monroe to feel a rising sense of dread. The ship wasn't just alien, it was ancient. And the technology it used seemed to defy all logic. "We need to prepare for the worst," Monroe said, standing from his command chair and walking toward the crew. "Contact Earth's military and get them ready. We don't know if this is an invasion or a diplomatic mission, but either way, we have to assume the worst." As the crew scrambled to relay the orders, Monroe felt the weight of the decision on his shoulders. The Council had banned Earth, but now they were facing an even greater threat. He didn't believe this was just a matter of diplomacy. No, something more was at play here. He watched as Earth's moon loomed in the distance, the same moon where the artifact had been discovered. The pieces were slowly falling into place. The artifact, the unknown alien ship, the Council's sudden decision to expel Earth from the Galactic Council, it was all connected. The truth unfolds. Back on Earth, chaos had already begun to spread through the leadership. High-ranking officials scrambled to assess the situation, but they were too late. The discovery of the artifact had already set things in motion. Monroe's eyes were fixed on the map once again, his fingers brushing the holographic display as if it could somehow reveal more answers. He knew the artifact was the key to everything, but who would be the first to uncover its true power? And what would happen once that power was unlocked? "Captain," Rhea spoke up, her voice filled with urgency. "We've detected a small fleet of ships leaving the alien vessel. They're heading straight for Earth's atmosphere." Monroe's heart sank. "How long do we have?" "Less than an hour," she replied. "They're preparing to land." Monroe quickly turned to Voss. "Get our fleet in position. We can't let them reach Earth without knowing what they want. And tell Earth's defenses to prepare for a ground assault, just in case." The fleet moved swiftly, surrounding the alien ship. Monroe watched as the strange vessels made their descent, each one carrying something unknown. Were they here to invade? Or were they searching for something far more dangerous than they could ever imagine? The unknown enemy had arrived. And Earth's future now hung in the balance. As the alien ships touched down on Earth's surface, the ground trembled. The sky darkened, and an eerie silence fell over the planet. Monroe took one last look at the dark expanse of space, knowing that whatever came next would determine humanity's place in the galaxy. The countdown had begun. Earth's military forces were scrambling to respond, but no one was ready for what was coming. Monroe stood at the command center of the Earth Defense Fleet's flagship, the Vanguard, his eyes fixed on the holographic map that displayed the trajectory of the incoming alien ships. They had descended into Earth's atmosphere just an hour ago, but their true purpose was still a mystery. Every attempt to communicate had been met with silence. On the surface, a storm was building. Every major city on Earth had gone into lockdown, and military personnel were being deployed to strategic locations. But no one knew what they were up against. "Captain," Rhea Sharma's voice cut through the tense silence in the command room. "The alien ships have touched down at 5 locations across the planet. The closest is in New York City. Another is in the Siberian tundra. The rest are spread across the oceans, on remote islands." Monroe's brow furrowed as he scanned the data. 5 locations? Why so spread out? "It's too soon to say," Rhea replied. "But it doesn't look like an invasion. No weapons fire. No bombings. Just landings. Almost like they're looking for something. Or someone," Monroe muttered under his breath. He glanced at Captain Elena Voss, who had entered the command room moments ago. Her face was drawn, her usual calm demeanor replaced with an urgent tension. "We've lost contact with the fleet on the ground," she said, voice tight with concern. "They're reporting strange energy readings. Something is interfering with our communications." Monroe's mind raced. Something wasn't right. They hadn't just landed in random spots, they were methodically choosing places that made no sense. Why target the Siberian tundra or remote islands? And what were the strange energy readings? Was the artifact involved? He turned to Rhea. Get me a direct line to Earth's leadership. I want to know what they've discovered about the alien ships. Rhea nodded and began working quickly at her console. Meanwhile, Voss stepped closer to Monroe. We can't just wait here. If they're searching for something, we need to find out what it is, and we need to do it fast. Monroe's mind was already working through possible scenarios. The artifact. He had no doubt it was central to all of this. But where was it? Earth's moon had been the place where it was found, but had the aliens already gotten their hands on it? Or was there something else, something deeper, hidden beneath the surface of Earth itself? A message blinked across Rhea's console, and she looked up sharply. I've got them, Captain. Earth's leadership has confirmed that they've located a structure beneath the surface of the moon. It's a massive complex, far older than anything we've ever seen. They believe the artifact is tied to it, and the aliens are likely looking for more. Monroe's heart skipped a beat. Beneath the moon's surface? A structure? It all made sense now. The artifact wasn't just a simple relic, it was a key to something far greater. And the aliens weren't here to make peace. They were here to claim it. The search begins. With the new information in hand, Monroe and his crew prepared for the next phase of their operation. The alien vessels were grounded for now, but that didn't mean they were done. Monroe knew that the moment Earth's defenses began to converge on the landing sites, the real battle would start. And the key to it all, the artifact, was still out there, hidden beneath the moon's surface. We need to get to the moon, Monroe said, voice firm. We need to find the structure beneath the surface. If we can get to it before the aliens do, we might just have a fighting chance. Voss nodded. But we don't know what's down there, Monroe. The structure could be a trap. The aliens might be waiting for us to make a move. Monroe's jaw clenched. It's a risk we'll have to take. The crew moved swiftly to prepare the fleet for launch. Monroe stood by the command console, his thoughts shifting between the aliens on Earth and the structure on the moon. The situation was becoming more complicated by the minute, and time was running out. Captain, Rhea spoke up again. We've received more encrypted messages from Earth. They've found something odd. Some kind of energy signature deep below the surface of the moon. It's not like anything they've ever seen. Monroe felt his pulse quicken. What kind of energy signature? Extremely powerful. Almost like a beacon, Rhea replied. And it's sending out pulses, almost like it's trying to communicate with something. Monroe turned to Voss. Do you think it's calling to the aliens? Could they have known about this for a while? Voss shook her head. I don't know. But what I do know is that if that beacon is meant to communicate with something, we might be too late. A desperate race. The Vanguard and the fleet of Earth's ships launched from orbit, racing toward the moon. The distance was short, but the tension was unbearable. Monroe couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. Every moment felt like an eternity as they approached. The moon's surface, the faint glow of Earth's blue oceans barely visible against the dark expanse of space. We're entering lunar orbit, Captain, Rhea's voice echoed through the command deck. We should be able to pinpoint the energy signature from here. Monroe nodded, his mind focused. He knew they didn't have long. The alien vessels on Earth would only stay grounded for so long before they made their move. And if the artifact truly was the key to everything, it would only be a matter of time before the aliens realized they were being outpaced. Get me a visual of the surface, Monroe ordered. Moments later, a hologram appeared in the center of the room, showing the moon's rugged surface. The base of the ancient structure wasn't far from the landing sites of the alien ships, only a few hundred kilometers away. Monroe's eyes narrowed. They were close. So close. Rhea's hands flew across her console as she began analyzing the data. Captain, the energy signature is coming from a deep crater near the South Pole. It's where we need to be. Prepare a landing party, Monroe said. We're going in. The plan was simple: land as close to the structure as possible, enter the facility, and secure whatever was inside. But Monroe couldn't shake the feeling that they were being drawn into a trap. Everything had felt too easy so far. The aliens had been too quiet, too methodical in their approach. And what if the artifact wasn't the only thing the aliens wanted? What if the entire structure beneath the moon's surface was a trap, designed to lure them into something far worse than they had ever imagined? The descent. The fleet descended toward the moon, their ships cutting through the airless void with silent precision. The closer they got, the more the tension grew. Monroe could feel the weight of every decision pressing down on him. If they failed here, if they didn't find the artifact and stop the aliens, Earth would fall. And the galaxy would be left at the mercy of an unknown enemy. The landing zone was rocky and barren, far from the populated areas of the moon. They set down a short distance from the crater, their ships kicking up dust as they touched down. Monroe and his team donned their spacesuits, ready to move out. As the airlock doors hissed open, the crew moved in tight formation, weapons drawn. The ground beneath their feet was soft, almost spongy from the age of the moon's surface. The only sound was the echo of their breathing inside their helmets. There was no telling what lay ahead, but Monroe had no choice but to press on. Stay sharp, Monroe instructed. We don't know what we're walking into. They moved toward the crater, and as they got closer, the ground beneath their feet began to hum. The energy pulses were growing stronger. Something was definitely down there, and it wasn't just a structure. It was alive. As they reached the edge of the crater, a massive shadow loomed over them, blocking out the light of distant stars. The energy pulse was now almost unbearable. Then, out of nowhere, a deep, metallic voice reverberated through the air. You should not have come here. Monroe's heart stopped. The voice was unmistakable. It wasn't human. It wasn't alien. It was something else. Something ancient. The ground trembled beneath their feet. The voice echoed through the crater, its resonance deep and mechanical. Monroe's heart pounded in his chest, his breath quickening as the ground beneath his feet trembled. His team tensed, weapons at the ready, eyes darting in every direction, searching for the source of the voice. You should not have come here, the voice repeated, its tone laced with something ancient and almost predatory. Monroe's grip tightened on his weapon. Everyone stay alert, he commanded, his voice steady despite the rising panic in his chest. We need to find out what's going on down there. Rhea, can you pinpoint where the voice is coming from? Rhea's hands flew across the controls of her portable console. She glanced up, eyes wide with a mix of awe and fear. The source of the signal. It's coming from below us. Right beneath the surface. But there's something else. A second signal. It's connected to the first, but it's different. Almost like a heartbeat. Monroe's mind raced. Whatever this structure was, it was far more than they had imagined. The energy pulse they detected was only part of something much more complicated, and possibly far more dangerous. They had to get to the heart of it, and fast. We keep moving forward, Monroe said, his voice unyielding. Stay close. We don't know what we're dealing with. The crew pressed on, the hum of the energy pulse growing louder with each step. It felt as though the very ground beneath them was alive, pulsing with an energy far older than anything humanity had encountered. Monroe's eyes shifted to the others, seeing the same unease reflected in their expressions. They were walking into something that had been buried for eons, and now, it was awakening. As they neared the edge of the crater, Monroe saw it, an opening in the rock, just large enough for the team to enter. The entrance was circular, framed by strange markings that seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. The symbols were alien, yet somehow familiar, like fragments of a forgotten language. Is this it? Voss asked, her voice low, almost reverent. Monroe nodded. We're about to find out. With a deep breath, he motioned for the team to enter. As they stepped through the opening, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew heavier, filled with the taste of metal and the faint scent of something ancient. The walls around them seemed to pulse with life, as though the very structure was responding to their presence. The inside was a labyrinth of metal and stone, the passageways twisting and turning in ways that defied logic. It was clear this was no ordinary structure. This was something far more advanced, something far older. The walls were lined with strange devices, their purpose unclear but undeniably foreign. Monroe paused, listening to the eerie silence that surrounded them. The only sound was the steady hum of the energy pulse, now vibrating through the walls. The deeper they went, the stronger it became. It felt as though it was guiding them, pulling them towards something. They rounded a corner, and suddenly, the path opened up into a vast chamber. The walls of the chamber were covered in intricate carvings, depicting scenes of beings, some familiar, others entirely alien, gathering around what appeared to be a massive, glowing object at the center of the room. "This is it," Monroe murmured, stepping into the center of the chamber. His eyes fell on the object, the artifact. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. It seemed to pulse with energy, its surface smooth and reflective, shimmering with a light that wasn't from any known source. As Monroe moved closer, the energy around the artifact seemed to intensify, filling the room with a low, vibrating hum. He could feel it deep within his chest, as though the very core of the artifact was alive, calling to him. "What is this?" Voss asked, her voice tinged with awe. "It's the artifact," Monroe replied, his voice almost reverent. "But it's more than that. This isn't just a key, it's a power source. And it's connected to everything." Before anyone could respond, the ground beneath them shook violently. The walls trembled, and dust began to fall from the ceiling. The entire structure seemed to be reacting to their presence. "Get back!" Monroe shouted, grabbing Voss and pulling her away from the artifact. But it was too late. A blinding light erupted from the center of the room, surrounding the artifact. Monroe shielded his eyes, his heart racing as the room was bathed in a dazzling glow. And then, the light began to fade, revealing something new, a figure. It stood before them, tall and imposing, its body covered in strange, armor-like plating. Its face was obscured by a dark helmet, and its eyes, if they were eyes, glowed with an unnatural light. The being emanated power, a presence so overwhelming that Monroe could feel it in his bones. The figure spoke, its voice deep and resonant. "You should not have come here," it repeated, the words now laced with a sense of finality. "The artifact is not for you. It is not for humanity. You are not ready." Monroe's mind raced. He had expected a confrontation, but this? This was different. This being, whatever it was something far more ancient than the aliens they had encountered before. It wasn't just a protector of the artifact. It was something much worse. "Who are you?" Monroe demanded, his voice firm despite the fear gnawing at him. The figure tilted its head slightly, almost as if considering the question. "I am the Guardian. The keeper of what you cannot understand. This artifact is a power that must never be wielded by those who are unworthy. And you," the figure's glowing eyes focused on Monroe, the weight of its gaze almost unbearable. "You are unworthy." Monroe felt a shiver run down his spine. He wasn't sure what to make of the figure's words, but one thing was certain, it wasn't going to let them leave with the artifact. And whatever this power was, it was something humanity wasn't prepared for. "We need to leave now," Voss said urgently, her voice tight with fear. She turned to Monroe, her eyes pleading. "Captain, we've underestimated this. We need to get back to Earth and warn everyone." Monroe shook his head. "We can't leave empty-handed. The artifact is the key to everything. We need it, or the aliens will take it." If they haven't already. But the figure stepped forward, blocking their exit. You do not understand. You cannot control it. None of you can. Suddenly, the ground shook again, but this time, it was more violent. The walls cracked, and dust poured from the ceiling. The figure turned, its eyes narrowing. The time has come, it said, almost to itself. The power will awaken, whether you are ready or not. Monroe's heart raced as the chamber began to collapse around them. He knew they had to act fast. The artifact was more than just a key, it was something that could change the entire galaxy. But was it worth the risk? Could humanity handle the power contained within it? Captain! Rhea shouted, her voice frantic. We need to move. It's going to bring the entire structure down. The figure, still standing in its place, seemed to be waiting for them to make a decision. The tension in the air was unbearable. Monroe's mind was in overdrive. He knew they had to leave, but the artifact, the power, was right there. Could they really just leave it behind? Could they risk letting the aliens, or worse, the figure, gain control of it? Get ready, Monroe finally said, his voice calm but determined. We're not leaving without it. As the chamber shook violently, the figure raised its hand, and a low hum filled the air, the energy around them growing stronger, more intense. Monroe knew it was now or never. Before he could make a move, a sudden blast of energy surged toward him, knocking him off his feet. The last thing he saw before the world went black was the figure standing tall, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly intensity. The world around Monroe blurred. The blast of energy had struck him with such force that he was thrown violently across the chamber. His body collided with the floor, and his vision swam in and out of focus. He tried to shake off the disorienting effects of the impact, but his head was spinning, and his muscles refused to obey him. His helmet's visor cracked slightly, a thin crack spreading across it like a spider's web. He reached up weakly to try and clear his vision but found his hand trembling. His chest ached with every breath, the air suddenly feeling thinner, as if the very atmosphere was being sucked out of the room. Through the haze, Monroe heard voices, distant and muffled. It was hard to focus on anything. His eyes darted around the room, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The chamber's walls were now shifting, their once steady hum replaced by a low, ominous growl that seemed to vibrate through the very foundation of the structure. Slowly, he forced himself to sit up. His vision cleared just enough for him to see the others, sprawled on the ground, groaning as they began to stir. Monroe. Voss's voice broke through the fog, low and strained. She was the first to push herself up, her helmet reflecting the dim light as she looked around the room in panic. I'm fine, Monroe said, though his voice was barely above a whisper. He stood unsteadily, his legs weak beneath him, as he took in his surroundings. The structure around them was collapsing. Bits of rock and debris rained down from the ceiling, and the walls continued to shake violently. The blast had been more than just a physical force, it was as though the entire complex was reacting to their presence. Rhea's voice was frantic now. The energy is intensifying. We need to leave, Captain. Now. Monroe's mind raced. The figure, the one who had warned them, was gone. But the artifact remained, sitting in the center of the room, glowing with an eerie light that pulsed with a rhythmic beat. It was as though the structure itself was breathing, reacting to the artifact's power. The figure had told them they weren't ready. But were they ever supposed to be ready? Was it even possible to be ready for something like this? The artifact wasn't just a tool, it was something far more powerful, something that transcended humanity's understanding. Monroe had been desperate to secure it, to wield it, but now the consequences were clearer than ever. He turned to face his team. We can't take it. Not like this. Voss stepped forward, shaking her head. What do you mean? We've come all this way, Captain. The artifact is our only shot at saving Earth. The aliens are already on the move. Monroe clenched his jaw. I know. But we're not prepared for what this thing is capable of. Look at what it's doing to this place. Rhea's face was pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. He was right. The Guardian, the one who warned us, he was right. The artifact is. It's alive. And it's not something we can control. Voss stared at the artifact, her gaze filled with a longing Monroe could sense even through her helmet. Then what do we do, Captain? Do we just leave it here for the aliens to take? Monroe's heart hammered in his chest. The choice was unbearable. They could leave now, retreat with their lives, but the artifact was humanity's only hope. Without it, the aliens would have free rein to conquer Earth, to take what they wanted, unchallenged. But to take it, that would come with consequences far beyond what they understood. We need to get to the surface, Monroe said, his voice tight with urgency. Get to the ships, and we'll figure this out. But we're not taking it with us, not yet. The team exchanged uncertain glances, but they all knew what had to be done. They had already risked too much. Let's move, Voss said, her voice steady despite the tension. We're running out of time. Escape from the crater. The journey back to the surface was treacherous. The structure was crumbling around them, the walls splitting and shifting with each tremor that rattled the chamber. They moved quickly but carefully, trying to stay out of the falling debris and avoid any potential traps the artifact might have triggered. As they reached the entrance of the crater, the energy pulse seemed to reach its peak. The ground trembled violently beneath their feet, and for a moment, Monroe thought the entire moon might shatter. We need to hurry. Rhea shouted, her voice echoing in the chaos. Monroe urged them to move faster. His mind was racing, but the more he thought about it, the more the weight of their situation became clear. The artifact wasn't just a tool, it was a weapon, one capable of reshaping the very fabric of space and time. They had no idea what it could do, or worse, what the aliens would do if they got their hands on it. Finally, they emerged from the crater and made their way back to the landing zone. The fleet was waiting for them, its ships glowing against the dark expanse of space. The Vanguard stood ready, its sleek form a beacon of hope in the midst of the chaos. As they boarded the ship, Monroe couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The structure they had just left was still alive with energy, and the strange, pulsing hum seemed to follow them, even now that they were in the safety of their ship. He glanced around the bridge, meeting the eyes of his crew. They all seemed just as unsettled as he was. Captain, Rhea said, her voice strained. The energy, it's still coming from the moon. It's getting stronger. And there's something else. A signal. A transmission. Monroe frowned. A transmission from where? She hesitated, then typed rapidly on her console. It's from the artifact. It's sending out a message, but it's in a language we can't decipher. Monroe's stomach sank. Is it from the aliens? I don't know, Rhea said, her voice tight with anxiety. But it's not just any message. It's like a call, a summoning. Monroe turned to Voss. What does that mean? Voss was silent for a long moment before answering. It means something is coming. Something we aren't ready for. The alien response. The Vanguard lifted off from the moon's surface, its engines roaring to life as it ascended into space. Monroe stood at the helm, watching as Earth grew smaller in the distance. The familiar blue and green planet now seemed fragile, like a delicate glass globe floating in the vastness of the universe. Behind him, the crew was silent, the weight of their mission heavy in the air. They had escaped the collapsing structure, but that didn't mean they were safe. The message from the artifact, the signal that was being transmitted, it could only mean one thing. The aliens weren't just after the artifact, they were coming for it. We need to get back to Earth, Monroe said, his voice firm. We need to warn them, and we need to prepare. The aliens are mobilizing. Rhea nodded, her eyes wide with fear. But they're already here, Captain. They've landed in 5 locations, and if they know about the artifact, they'll be heading to the moon soon. Monroe's mind raced. There was no time. They had to beat the aliens to the artifact, or it would be too late. But how could they fight something they didn't fully understand? As they sped toward Earth, the silence in the ship was deafening. Everyone knew what was at stake. If they couldn't figure out what the artifact was, if they couldn't stop the aliens from gaining control of it, humanity's future was in jeopardy. Just as they were about to enter Earth's atmosphere, a sudden explosion rattled the ship. The Vanguard shuddered violently as alarms blared. Captain! We've been hit! Rhea cried out. The alien ships, they've found us. Monroe gritted his teeth, his mind already calculating their next move. The battle had just begun. The Vanguard rocked violently as the explosion reverberated through its hull. Alarms screamed across the bridge, flashing red lights casting an eerie glow in the otherwise dimly lit room. Monroe's heart slammed against his ribcage as he gripped the armrests of his seat, trying to steady himself amidst the chaos. Captain, we've been hit. Rhea's voice was frantic, her fingers flying over the console as she tried to regain control of the ship. The shields are down to 20%. I can't stabilize the engine, we're losing power fast. Monroe's mind raced. The aliens had found them, and now they were in a battle they didn't have the upper hand in. The alien ships were already in orbit, their dark forms looming ominously around them. The fleet that had once seemed like a beacon of safety now felt like a fragile shell in the face of an overwhelming force. Get us out of here. Monroe barked. Can you do it, Rhea? I'm trying, Captain. She gritted her teeth, sweat beading on her forehead as she continued to work furiously at the controls. I need a few more seconds. Monroe's eyes darted to the view screen. Outside, the alien ships loomed closer, their massive forms blocking out the stars. The Vanguard was a small target compared to the alien dreadnoughts, and every passing second brought them closer to annihilation. Monroe had to think fast. This wasn't just about survival. This was about protecting Earth, and if they didn't do something now, the aliens would take everything. We need to launch the decoy drones, Monroe said, his voice low but steady. It'll give us time to break through their formation. Rhea, you get us out of here. I'll handle the drones. Without waiting for a response, Monroe stood and quickly moved to the tactical console. His hands moved over the controls as he initiated the drone sequence, sending out a swarm of decoy drones designed to confuse the alien ships. The drones, small and highly maneuverable, would scatter and create multiple targets, making it harder for the enemy ships to lock onto the Vanguard. Drones are launching, Monroe reported as the screens filled with small blips of moving targets. Rhea, it's all on you now. Rhea gave a tight nod, her eyes never leaving her console. I'm activating the warp drive. Hold on tight. With a burst of energy, the Vanguard lurched forward, a flash of bright light engulfing the bridge as the ship tore through space. The alien ships reacted instantly, firing in the direction of the decoys, their weapons lighting up the dark void in blinding streaks. For a moment, Monroe felt his heart rise with hope. They were making it out. They were escaping the alien fleet. Then, another explosion rocked the ship. The lights flickered, and the ship groaned as if in protest. The power systems began to fail, and the low hum of the engine sputtered before cutting out entirely. The Vanguard dropped out of warp speed, spinning uncontrollably as it drifted toward Earth. The ship's thrusters sputtered, failing to regain their footing. We're losing power again. Rhea yelled, her hands gripping the controls in desperation. We've been hit in the reactor core. We need to land, or we'll break apart. Monroe's mind raced. They couldn't land yet, not in the open, not with the alien fleet hovering above them. They needed to get the ship to a safe location, somewhere that wouldn't immediately give them away. But with their thrusters failing, they had little choice. "We need to find a place to land, now," Monroe shouted. "Voss, get to the auxiliary controls. Help Rhea." The crew moved quickly, trying to keep the ship intact long enough to escape the immediate threat. Monroe's eyes remained fixed on the viewscreen, watching as the alien ships moved into position. They were waiting for them, their massive guns trained on the vanguard. The alien vessels were far superior, but the humans had one thing they didn't: determination. "We have one shot at this," Monroe said, his voice sharp. "Rhea, can you get us to the surface? We need to make a crash landing. There's no other way." Rhea swallowed hard, her knuckles white as she clutched the controls. "I can try, but it's going to be rough. We won't have much time once we hit the atmosphere." "Do it," Monroe ordered. With a sharp nod, Rhea engaged the last remaining thrusters, and the vanguard lurched forward again, but this time, it was uncontrolled. The ship plummeted toward Earth, the alien ships closing in as the atmosphere grew thicker. Outside, the stars were fading as they approached the planet's surface. The sound of the vanguard tearing through the atmosphere was deafening, like a massive roar of a beast breaking free from its chains. The ship's hull began to glow as friction built up, the heat from entry almost unbearable. "Brace yourselves," Monroe shouted, holding onto the console as the ship spiraled toward the surface. The vanguard shook violently, its structure creaking under the stress. Rhea fought to keep the ship stable, her hands moving faster than Monroe thought possible, trying to guide them to the safest landing zone. There was no time for precision. Every second felt like an eternity. With a deafening crash, the vanguard hit the ground. The force of the impact threw everyone forward, and the lights cut out, plunging the bridge into darkness. The ship skidded along the surface, tearing through trees and rock, before finally coming to a shuddering halt in a deep crater. Monroe's ears rang as he tried to regain his bearings. His body was sore from the crash, but he couldn't afford to stay down. The alien ships would be here any moment. "Everyone up!" Monroe barked, shaking himself free from his restraints. "Move! We need to get out of here, now." Voss was the first to stir, pulling herself up from the floor. Rhea followed, her face pale but determined. "The ship's down. We're not going anywhere anytime soon." Monroe nodded. "We've got to get to the artifact. It's the only way to stop this." Rhea looked at him, her eyes full of confusion and fear. "But the aliens, they're already coming. We can't outrun them." "We can't hide either," Monroe said grimly. "But we can make sure the artifact doesn't fall into their hands." The team moved quickly, scrambling to the lower levels of the vanguard where the escape pods were stored. They would need to reach the artifact, hidden deep in the Earth's surface. If they didn't act now, the aliens would take control of it, and humanity would lose its only chance of survival. The final push. As Monroe and his crew exited the vanguard, the sounds of the alien ships loomed closer, the roar of their engines unmistakable. The area surrounding them was desolate, a barren stretch of rocky land with few places to hide. Their best bet was to get to the artifact as quickly as possible and hope they could use it to their advantage. Monroe scanned the horizon. The alien ships were already descending, their sleek forms cutting through the atmosphere like dark shadows. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. There was no turning back now. "Let's move," Monroe said, his voice firm. The team rushed forward, moving in a tactical formation as they made their way to the nearby ruins. The artifact, buried deep below the Earth's surface, was the only hope they had left. But Monroe knew the aliens wouldn't give up easily. They were coming, and they were ready to fight. As they approached the entrance to the ruins, a low, guttural growl echoed through the air. Monroe turned to see the alien ships descending rapidly, their weapons primed and ready. "This is it," Voss said, her voice steady but filled with resolve. "We fight here, or we lose everything." Monroe nodded. There was no other choice. The battle had begun. As the first blast of alien fire struck the ground near them, the world erupted into chaos. The battle for the artifact had started. And with it, the fate of humanity was in the balance.